everyone, and welcome back to Purple Noon, a podcast. I am Stephanie Conti, and I am here with my. I'm trying to think of a pun with Lady Snowblood, my
I know it's hard.
maiden of frost coagulation. That didn't work.
Okay, thank
Savannah
you. That
Lanausse.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate that, you try.
I tried. I tried my best. I realized really quickly, I'm like, there's not a lot of female characters I can call you, not a lot of relations I can make in here. And that's okay.
Positive ones at least, yeah.
Yeah. But how are you doing, Savannah?
Good. I'm proud of us because we are back on a consistent schedule.
Yes, yes. Like even to the point where we're recording the day before, the night before we usually upload, and I had to tell our editor Zach, I was like, I'm gonna have to take this one, Chief, because he is in an area where Wi-Fi is not the best, and
Right.
sadly, it's becoming, and not to a fault of his own or anything like that. It's just genuinely Wi-Fi issues. I send it, it takes like 2 hours for him to download our files. So I'm like, I got it from here, Chief. I'll try. So if you're listening to this episode, this is going to be an episode I edit. It's like, I think the second time I'm editing an episode.
Woo!
But like in terms of its audio and everything like that. So don't expect miracles, guys, if something happens. I'll leave the miracles up to Zach. But yeah, so I'm really happy that we're going to be very consistent with this, at least attempting to be.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm excited to be back, and I love this routine and everything that we have. Before we get into our review, have you seen anything new lately?
Oh, not really. This is actually the first. I've just been really busy with school and everything, so this was actually the first movie I saw in a little bit.
You've been reading though, right?
I
Because I
have
saw
been
that you have
reading.
like this new challenge reading thing that you're doing, right?
Yes, yes. I've been reading a lot of books. And I'm actually very, very excited because I am going to start. Have you heard of the show Daisy Jones and the Six?
Yes.
I am going to start it because I did read the book and the book was
Oh,
very interesting. So I'm excited to start that and I think the casting is really fun. So
so
I'll,
this
I'll have my review
challenge thing
later
that you're
on.
doing, can you
Yeah.
explain it to me? Because it was like, it kind of was like a book that you bought that had like a bunch of like little pockets. Is that correct?
Yes. So it's this big, I wouldn't even call it a book because you just open it and essentially it has like 25 little prizes. And each prize sort of pertains to like a reading challenge. Like, for example, one of the challenges were like, oh, read a novella, which is like a book, I think, shorter than 250 pages, or reread a book you haven't read in like a year, or like pick a book blindly off the shelf. So things like that. And it's been really, really fun because it kind of motivates me more to read or
Yeah.
like pick something I really wouldn't pick
Dude,
before.
you don't need the motivation because you actually read. I'm a fake reader. I'll buy
No,
20
you
books a
read
year
books.
and I will take 6 months to read one book. I have been reading Resident Evil Zero, the original book
Oh my
adaptation of the
God.
game, for since December. We're going on 3 months. I am not halfway there.
Okay, but to be fair, you are a busy,
I
busy
just do it
person.
all. I do it
You are a
all.
busy
I'm
bee.
busy. I try. I would love to finish the book series, but at this rate, I think for me to finish all the Resident Evil books, the paperback books at least, not the mangas. Like as if any nerd is going to correct me out there. Are you referring to the mangas or not? No.
Yeah.
So the paperback book series, at this rate, I think it'll take me 2 years. Don't even ask me
Okay,
about the
well,
current book I'm writing. Don't even ask me about it. I struggle every day looking at myself as I see a little review at the end of the day, a little notification pops up. Did you write 15 minutes of your book today? And I have to click no every day.
I've
So
been looking forward to your chapters.
I know, and it needs to happen. It needs to be done, and I promise at some point it will be done because I'm almost halfway there with it. And I know it's just one of those things where as you know what, things change. We're changing things up. I'm writing for 15 minutes after this. Savannah, remember that and ask me the next time we record an
I
episode
will. I will
and we'll see.
100%.
We'll see what happens. Because
I'll
I
be
think
expecting a
genuinely, if
chapter soon.
if I can just start, like it's one of those things where it's like I'll go, I can't spare an hour. I could only spare 10 minutes. If I spend 10 minutes doing it, I will eventually figure out how to get an hour in a day. Like it's
Yeah,
like a
for
build
sure.
up, you know?
For
But
sure.
so I have to do that.
Kind of
It
left me hanging here. I really
I
would like to know
know.
what happens.
I know. I have written more since you last read it.
Okay.
They were more like I was just typing them very quickly, just trying to get as much stuff possible done before school started 2 months ago. But I'm almost done. I'm at like out of it's supposed to be 13 chapters, and I think I'm like on chapter 8. So I'm almost done. It
I'm very
so
excited.
I gotta pick up the pace because it's it's time, and some other things that it is inspired by are releasing soon, and honestly I gotta capitalize it, and I gotta release it around the
You
time
have
its
to.
inspirations from it.
100%. It's perfect timing.
So I know, so that will be done. You can ask me next episode if I did it, and hopefully the answer will be yes. I won't lie, but hopefully it will be a truthful
We'll be cheering you
yes.
on 100%.
All right, so today we are
100%.
going to be reviewing, and I appreciate that. We are going to be reviewing Lady Snowblood. So, a little bit of background on Lady Snowblood. Originally, we were going to do the double feature. We couldn't do the double feature, but that's okay because one episode is better than no episode at all. Right, Savannah?
100%.
Okay, so we are going to be talking about the 1973 film Lady Snowblood that is currently available on Criterion. Uh the name of it, Criterion
Criterion
Channel.
Channel
Thank
and
you.
HBO Max.
And yes, HBO Max. And I still wonder why I paid $12 now that I have My Woman Next Door DVD.
That's
Anyways,
true.
that's a different thing. But it's about a strikingly beautiful young woman is trained from birth to be a deadly instrument of revenge against the swindlers who destroyed her family. The director is Toshiya Fujita. And in terms of the star, the main star who plays Our Lady Snowblood is Miku Kaiji. So I have never seen this film before prior to this. Like, this was my first time watching it. And I had heard for the longest time that, like, yes, this was a Kill Bill inspiration, but this still, even with knowing that going into it, the way that this film was made and how aggressive the film is still very much surprised me. Did you feel the same way? Like, did you know much about Lady Snowblood going into it, Savannah?
No, I think I knew the same like amount about you about Kill Bill and stuff, but like I agree with you. This film was a lot more violent. I don't know what I was expecting because I knew the plot, but it was a lot more violent, but not in an unnecessary way. Does that make sense? Like I do feel like the violence fit the plot very well.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's one of those things where, because when I think about films from this era, especially in Japan, I immediately think about Tokyo Drifter, which probably came out maybe 4 years before, so not that huge of a difference. And the difference in terms of graphicness between this, and I will say too, like, obviously Tokyo Drifter is not a big representation of like the time and everything, but Japan did have pretty strict like in terms of like ratings and things like that. So I was surprised by the amount of graphic, maybe because it wasn't like sexual or anything like that, at least in most cases, but I was still very surprised with how much blood, gore, and overall like graphic battle imagery that we had during this.
Yeah, you know, it actually vaguely reminded me of a movie you gave me, Empire of Passion.
That makes me sound like a freak. The fact that you're
No,
like, yeah,
you
you got
didn't
me this.
even watch it.
I
You
didn't
you
even.
gave
I
me the
wanted to get
blind
you a
gift.
Criterion I knew you didn't have, and I was like, oh, this sounds interesting.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. It feels similar, but definitely not as what's
No,
the
not as
word?
like like that movie was very graphic.
Yes.
It wasn't like you said, it wasn't extremely graphic with sexual content. Like you saw things, but you didn't see things. But with gore and blood and everything, definitely. I will say this was a lot more. I think Tarantino took a lot more than I thought he did,
Yeah. And I
especially when it came to the violence.
honestly, I'm gonna say I liked this character's background more than the Kill Bill.
Who though? Because obviously in Kill Bill, she's what's the Lucy Luce character? Because that's who I assume she's based off of.
Oh, I had heard that like the whole thing was inspired because Uma Thurman's character, her whole like background and everything like that is like trying to get revenge on like three people who tried to kill her and things like that. I I don't know. I thought it was
No,
based
I
off of
figured. I just thought specifically it would because Lucy Liu's character has the same background as this character. Like her family got killed, and she was raised to be an assassin. So I I sort of thought that like okay, like the whole thing, the whole plot is Lady Snowblood, but Lucy Liu's character is literally Lady Snowblood to the point where like when she dies, like Lucy Liu's character dies in Kill Bill, it's the same, almost the same death scene as Lady Snowblood's. Oops, spoiler, sorry. But yeah.
It's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's been a hot minute since I've seen Kill Bill, like 15 years, I think.
No, you're right though. The whole movie is clearly based off the plot.
Yeah, I think you know what it is? This is like the Rocco and his brothers type of stuff, where it's like you
Yes,
think
yes.
that Raging Bull is so original until you see Rocco and his brothers. So, and I understand, and like, no, like at the end of the day, like Tarantino was still able to make Kill Bill very much his own film, but you know,
Yeah, for
there
sure.
definitely could have been a lot more separation between the two. But even with everything considered, with the originality and everything like that, I think still that Lady Snowblood is a bit of a more, I don't know, I'm really drawn to the way that this film was not only like the plot and everything, but the structure. Like I was really surprised for a movie from the
Oh
70s
yeah.
how it all of a sudden like it was introducing us as chapters and stuff like that, and the way that this film was structured actually correlated from the beginning to a character that we wouldn't see until the midway through. And I thought that was really, really smart and really advanced for 70s filmmaking to kind of structure the film around a character in the future that we don't know starting.
You know, for sure. And honestly, I did feel like it helped me keep up with the plot even better because it everything would relate to what was going on, even the flashbacks. And it would kind of help me keep up with all the characters, who she was going after next. And it did explain her sort of mentality. I think Kill Bill is super fun and I love Kill Bill. And Lady Snowblood is different in the way because this is actually a very serious situation.
Yeah.
And she is very serious, very intense, very driven. So um, I appreciated that about Lady Snowblood for sure.
I think also one of my favorite components about this film is the fact that this film tries to convince us that Lady Snowblood is anything but human. Like the
Yeah.
way that they describe her and pretty much saying like how they did like how the mother and like how the mother like filled with so much hate, knowing that she was going to be behind bars her entire life and everything like that, ends up, just she was like, everyone thought I was a whore. Meanwhile, this is what I was doing. And like, she's having sex with, prison workers, just trying to get pregnant. And it's like a whole ritual thing. And like, I love the idea of like bearing a child, like not in real life, not in real life, not in real life, but the idea of
Yeah,
in
story wise.
fiction, or in a film, bearing a child from hate to where their only purpose is to destroy. I feel like this is it very much ahead of its time because it feels like it gives such artificial intelligence to a human. Like the way that she's structured, the way that she thinks and everything is so robotic and so just zeroed in on what her goals is. And her goal is to um obviously kill and avenge her family. But we never really see the human side of her until the end when, and obviously it was a spoiler alert that was already mentioned, but when she ultimately dies, air quote.
Yeah, I really agree with what you're saying about like the sort of like robotic feel of her. I thought she was almost like a ghost, and every character around her sort of treated her like a ghost. All the people that she was around knew she was coming. And it was almost like this haunting sensation. So it was really, really cool. And I do like to see characters that just don't have, and it's gonna sound weird, but especially characters that are doing some violent stuff, it is refreshing not to have to go through the whole like, this is my emotional story, this is why I'm doing this, and this is why you should feel bad. Like
Yeah,
she is just
it's
straight up
the
a
Elaine
killer.
Delon Samurai effect, where sometimes
Yes.
you just need films that portray, or even your like No Country for Old Men. Sometimes you just really need a dark character that has nothing inside of them, like no
Yeah.
emotions, no nothing, just a goal or a purpose. And I think that this film did it so well. And I really love too how this film kind of sets us up at some point to think that Lady Snowblood is about to have some form of a love interest. And maybe
Oh
just for a
yeah.
second, we'll get a glimpse of her in like a human state or in a human form or in a, like just see a quick emotion from her. But even then, like at a point, there's a like when and I'm forgetting his character's name, but she ends up meeting the writer. I think his name is I don't think he has
I
a
can't remember.
I think it was Ryu. Ryu, maybe. I'm sorry, I'm
Okay.
not so sure. A lot of these don't have profile pictures on there, and I'm forgetting the character's name. But anyway, the writer's character, how he ends up being revealed to have ties with one of the men that she wants to kill and everything, and even like the guy who's like on the top of her, hit list, and how there's this really great window of opportunity for her to almost kill him and like kill the bad guy and save the journalist. Like at least to me, it felt like that there was a clear window of opportunity to do so, but it was the harder way of going about things.
Yeah.
So her last thing in the end is just she kind of sacrifices this writer by piercing through him
Yeah.
to get to
Yeah.
her target. And I think that's when you realize like she never had emotions for him. There was nothing ever going to happen between them. I mean, did you also think that there was time for her? Because I feel like just the way maybe it could have just been that the scene and how it was laid out, but I do feel like they tried to emphasize like the length of that scene by showing like, hey, yeah, she could have been a lot quicker. She could have had that attempt. Do you think like, do you agree with me or do you think that it was unintentional?
No, that's deliberate. Like this whole time we're seeing this lady like slash through people. She's super quick the entire, like there's not a moment where like there's hesitation. So when we see the scene where she's just going through this guy, like it was sort of the nail in the coffin in terms of if she's gonna have some kind of life after all of this. Because there's no like I think I interpreted that scene as like there's no going back.
Yeah.
Like when you're done like with this whole thing, she's not gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna settle down. Like that's not what's gonna happen. So I actually really not to say I didn't want this woman to be happy in her life, but I was just like, oh well, I like the character of Lady Snowblood being this ghost figure. And I
And
think
I'm
sort of
excited to see
adding
number two.
yeah. I don't know where number 2 is going to go.
So I already read the synopsis for it. So do you know anything about what number two is about?
Okay. No, I obviously figured that she is alive, so but that's it.
So number two, and just from the synopsis that I read, is about her surviving. And she ends up taking this plea deal where instead of going to life in prison, she ends up becoming like a government assassin to kill other government officials within Japan at the time.
Whoa. Good
Yeah.
for her.
So I'm
Getting
really
a real
interested to
job.
see how that goes and how it plays out and everything like that. I feel like I don't know because obviously like Lady Snowblood is so good on its own. I am not sure if it's going to live up. Like normally, and of course, sequels don't live up to the first film, right? So I don't know how that's going to go. If maybe I would love to see some characters from this film pop up again in the next film.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would love to see that as well. I just don't know how you end a story like Lady Snowblood's. I don't know. I just really liked the idea of it. Obviously, the second one can be great. I could just be overreacting, but like I did like the way the first one ended. Like, oh, she's kind of alive. Then that's it. Like we don't really know what happens to her, but I feel like it's going to be harder to end her story. So I hope maybe they kind of do justice, but I am very nervous because I
Yeah, I'm
really
actually
enjoyed her
so it
character.
is the same director and it looks like the same writer and of course the same actress who are all involved in Lady Snowblood 2. But and from the looks of it, I do think some of previous characters do come back, but from the most part it looks like all a brand new cast. But I mean, it still does look really good. And one thing that I was also really surprised about is did you know that this originally was based off a manga series that came out in the early 70s?
I didn't, but I did. No, I didn't, but I did read that somewhere. So that's really cool. That's interesting.
Apparently too, it was recently, I think within the past 20 years or so. I say recently as if that's recently in the times of like when Lady Snowblood first originated. But I think that it they did a full series and Dark Horse Comics recently kind of brought it back. And I thought I saw it because I thought I saw like new versions of it where it was in color now. So honestly, I really want to
Very
see
cool.
and I want to read it. I want to read it because I want to see if there's any different things about Lady Snowblood. Like was she more human in the manga compared to the movie and things like that? I'm kind of curious. Um but I mean overall like
That would be a very cool read.
I think some of the scenes in here are just insane. Like I like the amount of blood used and everything like that. Did you particularly have a favorite scene within this film?
I mean, I thought her introduction was perfect. I don't think there was a better way to introduce her.
I also really
That was
like
one of my
the
favorite scenes.
scene where
Her yeah.
I was gonna say I really like the scene. I apologize. I think there's like a little bit of a lag in our connection. So if it
There
sounds
is a
like
lag.
no
Yeah, there's a
worries.
lag.
No worries. I think one of my favorite scenes is like the whole story with like the mother in the prison and like her giving birth and everything like that. And I also and I won't say I like it because obviously it's a really rough scene, but I was
Mhm.
impressed, but also extremely shocked at how graphic the scene where they recreate what happened with the mother and everything. I was very suppressed how like not suppressed, very surprised with how far
Yeah.
of lengths that they went into that scene. And I think also the last thing I'll say about this is I think my favorite scene in this entire film now that I recognize it, I love the intros to the bad guys that they did. I love the intros. Like they
Yeah.
had like that where you saw their different faces, it would stop for a second. It felt very pop and it felt very new considering that this movie is a movie that's supposed to be taking place in like the late 1800s. So I really like that
Right.
funky 70s style directing that they kind of highlighted and utilized even though it necessarily didn't go with the time, like it didn't match the timing of it or the time frame of this entire film.
Oh, for sure. It definitely made the movie very, very unique. Um, I will say, like, the female actresses in this movie shine so bright. Like, every actress in this movie was so good in their roles. I was very impressed. We loved to see it.
Yeah, I think uh Miku Kaji, who plays Lady Snowblood, couldn't have played it any better. In
Oh,
fact, like
yeah.
genuinely, like in terms of nailing that emotionlessness, like she has like Elaine Delon, style in terms of playing that cold killer, which obviously here at Purple Noon, we love Elaine Delon and we love his acting style and everything like that. And I think it was so cool to be able to see something similar, but still she was able to make it so her own. So I was really impressed by Miku and also the female like bad guy. I was really impressed by her
Yeah,
because
she was
normally
great.
you don't have female villains in this type of from films from this decade and things like
Yeah.
that that are just as vicious as the men that she was surrounding with. In fact, I think she was like one of the worst because she was like almost, even though
No,
she
yeah.
wasn't considered to be the ringleader of it all, she definitely called a lot of the shots that were happening involved, like with Lady Snowblood and her parents.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. And also a lot of these women like you were saying, like there wasn't a lot of examples back then for like female villains or like characters like Lady Snowblood. So they kind of originated, especially Lady Snowblood, either the emotion, ugh, the non-emotion, um, and also like I don't know what the word I want to use, like the cruelness of the female villain. There's not a lot of examples like that prior to Lady Snowblood. So I thought it was really, really impressive that they were sort of able to like almost create these people and really sell them.
Yeah, and I think this is also one of the rare cases that we actually have a what's known as like a Chambara film, where it's like this type of decade and involving like sword fighting and stuff like that, where our lead is a female. I personally I
Yeah.
don't know off the top of my head movies that are Chambara films like this that have female leads. And I really love that. And genuinely, like out of other like films, similar films in the past and everything like that, I do think that this is one of the top ones to be made, not only for the main character, but for this unique style of directing and pace that this film has.
Oh, 100%. Definitely.
Before we rate the film, is there anything else about this film that you want to point out or highlight?
I really liked this film more than I thought I would. I didn't have I had like good expectations going in, but it definitely blew what I thought was going to happen. Blew my expectations. I genuinely really like this movie. I probably put it in my top 50.
Yeah, I agree, especially for like sword fighting action and things like that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this film. I thought it's also one of those films too where like look, no dig on him, but with Akira Kurosawa, you're watching a 3-hour film. This was a
Yes.
very nice story compacted in an hour and a half film. And that
Yeah.
also I think is really great that they were able to tell such a long and thick story without making it feel that way. It
Yeah.
has an awesome balance between story and action, which is very, very hard, I feel like, to balance out, especially like when you consider that this was all shot on film, where there is no going back and looking at what you have and stuff as you shoot along the way, what you
Yeah,
have is what
yeah.
you have, and if it ends, it ends. That's it. So I was really impressed with how this was balanced overall, and just the coolness of all these characters and the uniqueness too. I feel like sometimes um with these type of Chambara films or even action films from this type of period, all the villains tend to be the same. It's just like, yeah, I did this,
Yeah.
or I burned a
Caricatures.
village,
Yeah.
and I really
Yeah,
liked
yeah.
how all of these people were involved in something like so damning, so
Like very
crazy,
insane.
very
Yeah.
insane type of stuff. And to the point where it's like, honestly, honestly, I could understand why the mother did what she had to do. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Like the fact that she was like, not only did she had to see her husband killed, but one of these goons took her in, pretended like was like, "You're my wife now." Ha ha ha. We're gonna run a little restaurant or whatever they did. That's insane. That's
No, it's like
psychological.
evil.
That's
Yeah, that's
psychological
like some evil
warfare.
stuff.
Do you imagine
For
like
no
you're with your
reason.
husband and it's like, remember I killed your other husband a few years ago and now I made you a chef in my restaurant? Ha ha ha. Like that's insane. Like that's
No, it's yeah,
absolutely
for real.
crazy. And then
They tortured
also
that lady.
the fact that she could even say this and then they're like, yeah, but you killed your husband. Life in prison is also insane too. So, I thought it was so cool. I think it's such a sleek film. And yeah, like just honestly, like this has also really great rewatchability. And not a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
action films, especially Japanese action films, have a lot of great rewatchability because usually the time of it is so long. This, like I said, that perfect hour and a half package. I think I'm ready to rate this film. How about you?
Yeah,
What's your rating, bestie?
I'm ready. So I actually think it deserves a 10 out of 10. There's nothing about this movie I would actually change, and the pacing is fantastic. And kind of like you said, I could see myself rewatching this multiple times, like showing it to everybody I know. Um, it has it's great for a wide variety of audiences. I understand if people don't like gore and blood, maybe not for them, but I do see a lot of people liking this movie, and I 100% would own it. I have your copy, bestie. I promise that I will give it back to you at some point. But yes, I will buy my own copy.
Yeah, I actually agree. Like this would probably be in like probably like top best. Like I totally agree, like 50 films and stuff like that. I think for the sole purpose of the fact that it has such amazing rewatchability, it is so reinventive for its time, and the fact that we're talking about a much older film with really well developed female characters and villains. I feel like that is our biggest complaint whenever we watch older action films or even just any movie past 1990, where sadly the women were just bland, no personality, all the same type of stuff. So I think because of that,
Yes.
this does deserve a 10 out of 10 because it for me at least addresses one of the biggest problems when having action films or essentially female action stars is usually it's a lot of over dramatics. It's either, always like something crazy. Like I feel like this is so unique and it does it so right. So I have to say, even though maybe personally
Yep.
I would give it a 9.5 out of 10, but for the sake of like the fact that I don't know of another film that could have done something like this, it has to be a 10 out of 10. Like I don't think there's anything else that comes close besides Kill Bill, of course. But of course, we wouldn't have Kill Bill without this film. So
Yeah.
I think it's got to be a 10 out of 10.
Okay. We agree.
Which I was not expecting when we first mentioned this. I think this is the
Not
most
expecting
surprising
either.
10 out of 10 because for this type of film, I am genuinely surprised it is not talked more about, not only amongst the
Yeah.
Criterion people, but overall in general. Like, this is a outstanding action
Yeah.
film.
I totally agree. Couldn't agree more.
All right, so that's it from us for Purple Noon. We give this score 10 out of 10. I currently own it on Criterion. Savannah's going to buy her own copy. But in terms of next time, so if you would like to watch Lady Snowblood in the meantime, once again, the first and second film, I believe, are both available on HBO and the Criterion channel. As always, thank you so much to our patrons for subscribing. And if you would like to be shouted out in every single episode, please check out our Patreon below. It's only $1 a month to receive a shout out for every single episode when you subscribe to our Patreon. And
Woo.
so, as always, thank you so much to Sensei David, Homeboy James, Danny Boy, and our buddy Ryan. Thank you guys so much for contributing to our Patreon. It does help us out. It helps us. It
Yes.
it, it makes the burden of me being bled dry by the Criterion channel just a little less every year. So thank you guys so much. Now, in terms of when you're going to hear us next, our next episode is going to be a quick chat video episode available on YouTube only, where we will be talking about the Oscars. And so that episode should be
Woo.
available the day of the Oscars before Oscar showtime, though. So you'll be able to hear our opinions and what we think and everything like that before watching the Oscars. And also, when we resume back the following week to our regular recordings, it will be on Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh, awesome.
So that's going to be a fun one for episode 89. Thank you guys so much for listening and tune in next time. Bye.
Bye.